Greetings, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great, great. Welcome to Caregiver Chronicles. How are you this evening?
Hey, Pastor. I'm doing fine.
Hello, everyone. How everybody doing?
All right, all right. Welcome to Caregiver Chronicles Friday Night Live. Ask Dr. Yvette anything. Let me just tell you a little bit about Caregiver Chronicles. It is a 16-module online course on caregiving. The courses cover every aspect of caregiving from the onset of your loved one's illness or your illness until the recovery or the transition of your loved one. Friday Night Live, Ask Dr. Yvette Anything, is an open forum to discuss topics related to caregiving. Now, this week's topic is observing your loved one's religious belief. And we have several ministers and pastors who will be joining us tonight and others as well to discuss their ministry in shepherding the ailing flock. So some of our guests tonight, we have Minister Welton Pleasant II, who is the pastor at Christ Second Baptist Church of Long Beach, California. He is also the president of the California State Baptist Convention and the Far West Regional Vice President for the National Baptist Convention. So thank you for joining us tonight, Pastor Pleasant.
Thank you. Good to be here.
We have also Dr. Ricardo Bartlett. I believe he is trying to come in at this time. Give me just a second. I'll let him in, and then I'll introduce him as well. Okay. I'm admitting the in-persons to come in the room with us so we can have a discussion, okay? All right. Okay, so we have tonight, we also have Dr. Ricardo Bartlett Sr. He is the of Iron Missionary Baptist Church of Los Angeles, California.
Okay, now breathe.
If you're speaking,
no. So I just want him just to breathe, like rest in between instead of.
And then we also have Dr. Roy Morrison. He is lead pastor of Mount Pleasant Missionary Baptist Church in Orlando, Florida. And he is the president emeritus of the United Baptist State Convention Incorporated. And we also have my pastor, Reverend James A. Brooks II. He is the lead pastor at St. John Missionary Baptist Church. So thank you for and welcome. I want to start out by just going over what we're going to discuss tonight. The reason for this segment is to help others understand the importance of observing one's religious beliefs, which will have a profound effect on their healing process. Christian approach to pain, suffering, and sickness is compassion, mercy, tenderness, and caring. Matthew 9:36 says, reads, "But when he saw the crowds, he was moved with compassion for them because they fainted and were scattered like sheep without a shepherd." Write them off. He didn't write them off because of their illness. He didn't blame them for their illness, and he didn't discourage them or tell them to give up on their illness. He had compassion, and if we're going to be like Jesus, we have to have compassion toward others when they are sick. So as pastors, is it safe to say that you shepherd all ages or age groups at this time, ministers? We have several ministers on the line.
Yes, that is definitely true. We have multi-generations in our church, and each of them have various illness at times, and so it does require us to minister in a multi-generational way. So from the youngest to the elderly, health issues do come up, and so we find ourselves ministering cross-generationally.
If I get a chance, I'm gonna try and call you tomorrow.
Okay, great, great. And Pastor Bartlett, you're in with us now. Did you want to respond to that?
Okay, I have a question. I just came in.
I'm sorry. You said you just came in, you didn't hear the question? Well, is it safe to say that you minister to all age groups at this time? Did you hear me?
I beg your pardon?
I said, is it safe to say that you minister to all age groups?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great, great. And so it's important that you have compassion for them and you can embrace them and and just kind of provide support to any age group who is ill in your ministry. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great, great. Now, as pastors, how do you support your members or anyone who is sick in your congregation from your ministerial perspective? How do you go about doing that?
We have an array of ministries. I personally do it, but I have an array of ministries. I have a Someone Cares ministry. We have a bereavement committee, and we have a seniors ministry. And the construct is such that we try to do personal communication one-on-one.
Okay, great. Pastor Morrison, did you want to answer, respond to that question, if you will?
Certainly. Primarily in our congregation, we have what is called the Family Care Plan, our diaconate ministry, which consists of our deacons and deaconess, have general oversight and care for our congregations. More specifically, we do have a separate 501c3 that's called Silver Angels, which ministers primarily to our seniors. And I'm quite fortunate because in our congregation, I actually have a great group of seniors, all of the way up to centenarians. I have just a large group of people. So we have many ministries, but our primary method of caring for our congregation is through our family care plan. And our families are divided up alphabetically among deacon care teams. I think we have right now primarily 5 care teams in our church that have oversight for our entire congregation.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Did I understand you saying that you have a specific group for that, a 501c3 or something like that?
Well, that's for our senior citizens. We have what's called Silver Angels,
Okay.
which is a consistent weekly ministry that provides care, nutrition activities for our seniors and disabled, convene on a weekly basis, and they have various activities. They take trips both locally and out of state. They do a number of things, but they cater primarily to the care of the seniors.
Okay. Okay. What if you have a younger person in your congregation? Would they also be able to receive services from that program?
Well, of course, we have other multi-generational ministries, such as for the younger segment, we have what's called Next Gen. For the age group that's from 24 up to 40, we have Joshua Generation. So we have in our church currently right now somewhere around 45 ministries. So it covers the gamut of I guess ministry care and oversight for the entire congregation.
Okay, great, great. And Pastor Brooks, want to just bring you in on the conversation as well. I know that we have a number of ailing or elderly members. So if you could kind of touch on that, if you will, please.
Okay. Thank you for that. I would say, first of all, to kind of answer the question that the other pastors here have been answering.
Yes.
We do have a multi-generational church. We are a smaller church, but it is still multi-generational. We have not necessarily had to deal with the younger generation getting sick lately. It's been mainly our seniors this far. But even with our ministry, what we do have, besides the personal visits that I would do, we do have a committee that either before COVID-19, we would visit people that were ailing on a weekly or biweekly basis, or at least give them a call, which is something we still do. even after this virus is raging. So that's what we do. So even though we're a smaller congregation, we still find ways to get it done.
Okay, thank you, thank you. All right. So I just wanted to just have an open discussion. Basically, I know that in the church, some of the churches have others that go out and minister to the sick and ailing. Do most of your churches have that option? Like Pastor Pleasant, does your church have an outreach ministry where they go out and see the elderly or the sick? Or do you try to handle all of that yourself?
No, I could not handle that all myself, even though I try to visit as much as possible those who are hospitalized. But we have a wonderful senior ministry at Christ Second Baptist Church. That's part of their responsibility is to do congregational care. And they do an excellent job in keeping up with the congregation, notifying me of those who are in the hospital. And so it's a team effort by all stretch of our imagination. The deacons, everyone is part of that congregational care ministry. And so our church is really a family. And so we have a tendency to really look out one for another. And so word spreads quickly about someone being sick, and it gets to us. And, you know, we will have various people, unless the family has requested no visitors. We won't violate that. Usually they will let us know that. They will allow me to come and visit, and I will do that. But for the most part, it's a team effort. Our members in our senior ministry in particular do a very fine job in visiting and helping me keep up with those who are hospitalized. Okay,
great, great. And Pastor Bartlett, did you want to chime in on that? How does that work? I know you pastor two churches, so that's the challenge in itself, going from one church to the other.
Yeah. The seniors ministry encompasses visitation as well as running errands. We even have a committee that will come in and assist with housekeeping facilities. Again, just trying to meet the needs of those individuals where they are.
Okay. All right. Does anyone in the audience have a question that you want to ask? If you do, please do so. Just unmute yourself and you can chime in as well. I don't want to exclude you, so you're here. So if you have a question, please ask it, okay? So let's go on to the next area we wanted to talk about. When you minister to the members or anyone, do you find it helpful to provide spiritual support to their family members? Because a lot of times when your congregants or your members are ill, their family members probably, they may even need more support than the patient themselves. So is that something that you embrace as well?
Can I take that one?
Go ahead, Morrison. Good to see you, man.
Let me take that one. Most assuredly, that for me is one of my pet peeves. And the reason being because my wife and I had a daughter, our only daughter, who suffered with cancer from the age of 6, all of the way up until she succumbed at age 22. One of the things that I learned from personal experience is how long-term ailments can impact the primary care providers. And for that cause, I'm really sensitive to that. As a matter of fact, let me just share with you, since the 2nd of April this year, as a matter of fact, tomorrow, I've got a service at 10 a.m., but I've lost 15 members.
My goodness.
I lost 5 in a matter of 7 days. Many of these people, again, were octogenarians, nonagenarians, meaning persons between the ages of 90 and 100 and 80 and 89. Many of them, their primary care givers have been their family members. And so for that reason, I am quite sensitive as it relates to those who need extended care. One of the things I've discovered is that people will stick with you and they'll say, you know, give me a call if you need me. as long as it's only a week or a month ailment, maybe 2 months, 90 days, they'll hang in there with you. But when you're talking about extended ailments, when you're talking about a year, 2 years, 5 years, that's where the church has to develop ministry that will relieve and assist those caregivers and family members, to give them an opportunity to have a moment of reprieve and relaxation. And I'm grateful for that. As a matter of fact, we're fortunate because one of our members is the CEO of Guardian Care, which is a care facility here in the city of Orlando. And they have developed a daycare program for family members who just need a break. If they need to take a vacation, they can leave their loved one there at Guardian Care. They receive medical care. Their medication is administered. They are taken care of in a qualitative way. And so what we do is to help our members get a break. We refer them to Guardian Care and to other vital programs that are connected to our congregation. So I want to thank you for asking that question, because no one knows the extent. Basically, for 16 years, my wife and I cared for our daughter. And I was just saying on my broadcast earlier today that in the amount of time that she spent in the hospital in Kaiser facilities, Kaiser Fontana, she ultimately succumbed there in Duarte. But the bottom line is she never spent a night in the hospital by herself. Either my wife or I stayed with her. And so, and that was amid me continuing to pastor, maintaining a full schedule, my wife working her job at San Bernardino Valley College in San Bernardino. So that's a good question. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. You're quite welcome. And I asked the other panel members, if they're ministers, if they would respond to that as well.
I think Pastor Morrison did an excellent job in covering that subject matter. I think ministering to ailing family members is critical, and it goes with the responsibility of ministering to the patient as well, because oftentimes those family members who have loved ones who are sick, they're wrestling with questions of faith.
Oh yeah.
And some of them make some critical decisions about, do I take my loved one off of life support, or do I keep them on? And so it is a time where you have to minister to the family, because they will look to you for answers in those type of crises. A wise clergyman once said, physical crisis also are cries of faith. And so it's a challenge time for those who are dealing with those who are sick. And so part of our job pastorally is to try to minister to them as they go through that crisis. Sometimes you don't always have the words to say, but I've discovered after 25 years of pastoring, sometimes it's not what you say, it's the ministry of presence.
Right.
Sometimes just trying to be there with them, and we sometimes underestimate the ministry of presence. And so, I think we have to try to be there and walk through families. I've sat in conversations with doctors and family members about the situation. Should it be a life or death situation? Should we take them off life support or keep them on? And so I've had to walk family members through that, pray with them as they make those decisions. So that is critical, part of our job in terms of pastoral care.
Right, right. Okay.
I would actually like to second that point as well. I'll say that on behalf of my generation, the millennials, for those of us that can't.
The millennials.
One thing I find, again, not only as a pastor, but just me being in this age group, is that a lot of, at least my generation, has very little experience with death. And for sometimes this, the person that may be ailing at that moment, that may be their first real time experiencing that.
Right.
And you are right, Pastor Pleasant, that these questions are being asked. I know even when there were certain things going on with our family, and just relating that to people at my workplace, some of my peers at that workplace, they hadn't gone through any of those questions. They hadn't gone through that situation, but they were asking those questions. If God is so good, how can He, et cetera, et cetera.
Why is He letting this happen?
It's definitely important to be ready to minister, not just to the person that's ailing, but also the family members and friends around.
Right. Okay.
I chime in with the fellow clerics that it is an important aspect of ministry that you also minister to the family.
Right.
I try to make sure that I don't encroach, but that I'm invited in, that they have a level of comfort as we discuss the total realm of spirituality as we deal with, especially when it comes to death. That you want to minister, but you also want to be mindful and respectful of where they are, and if in fact there is a blended situation where perhaps they have a pastor or they have a church,
Right.
and so I'm always mindful and conscientious of that aspect.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you so much. Is there any questions from those who are listening in? Do you have any comments? If you do, please let me know. Thank you for that, gentlemen. All of you gave a great insight on how you would handle a family member of someone who is ill, because that's the critical piece, because they're oftentimes a caregiver. They're often more stressed than the patient. They are often more times feeling the pangs, if you will, of the illness more so than the patient. So it's critical that you appeal to them and that you make sure that they are aware that you are there to support them as well as the loved one or the person who is ill.
Might I add this, please?
Yes, sir.
Just as a notation is that, interestingly, I have actually seen, and possibly others have seen it as well, I've seen persons be placed on hospice care and actually outlive their caregivers.
Yes.
Caregiver.
That has
And truth of the matter is, a very noted pastor right there in the city of Los Angeles, I won't call his name, he served as my moderator, was a senior pastor. They placed him on hospice, and he outlived 2 of his caregivers. Right. And so it is imperative that the caregivers be ministered to, and that there be, even to the extent, professional care provided for them. One of the things we do in our church as well is that I have some of my ministers who have completed or who are currently in their MDiv programs, who I sign up to be on the chaplain programs at local hospitals, to give them some expertise in ministering to people, encountering death, seeing various circumstances. And it really helps them as they develop their relationships with people and desire to pastor.
So basically you have a tool or a input where you educate your members or your leaders in your church about how to embrace those who are ill and their families as well, because a lot of times when you haven't gone through it, you don't understand it. You don't understand the magnitude of what a person is dealing with if you are not ill or you have not had a family member or loved one who is ill. And so that's really a great program to have some type of training or intervention for those who are ministering in your congregation as well. That's really great. So I want to talk a little bit about an article that I read. And this article talked about the attributes of a minister who's caring for the sick. It talked about thoughtfulness, understanding that the congregant is in pain. It talked about presence, being available to the congregants, acceptance, removing the embarrassment, because a lot of times when people come to you, they have an illness, they don't want nobody else to know. They may have HIV, they may have AIDS. They don't want nobody else to know that. And so it's important also that, you be able to observe that. Or affirmation of giving people the gift of hope. Medicines, a gift from God, the Good Samaritan. I know you've heard that. So that's definitely part of this as well. Prevention or teaching health habits is critical as well. Because if we don't take care of ourselves, then 9 times out of 10, we are going to succumb to something, other than the norm, if you will. And so prevention is important. Confidentiality is also important, because a lot of times when people come to you, they don't want everybody to know their business. They don't want other people in the church to know their business. So they come to you in confidence. And so that's something that's really held high with regard to the ministers and the leaders in the church. And prayer, of course, is a critical piece of it, or asking God to heal the people who are sick. And so I know we already kind of touched on it, but let's talk about bereavement and counseling and intervention, as it is very prevalent in ministry. Because a lot of times when a loved one passes, the family is going to look to you for guidance and direction. And I think we kind of touched on it a little bit already, but they're going to look to you to just kind of tell them what to do, because they don't really know. I have a loved one that just passed, and I don't know what to do, Pastor. How are you going to help me? How are you going to help me get through this? How would you respond to them? How would you help them?
I don't think it's a one case fit all situation. I think each situation requires some individual decisions made by you as the pastor in terms of how you're going to minister. A lot has to do with your relationship with the family as well. You got to take that into consideration. But again, I think the best thing in times like that is that you just got to be there. You got to be there.
And
sometimes they don't know what to do at all. And then sometimes if you're at the hospital and the person have just passed, sometimes you have to even work with the doctors to instruct them to do some certain things. But sometimes you don't want family members to come and see the body that's not really presentable. They just worked on it and people coming in. So you have to go and ask the nurse or the doctor, could they get the body cleaned up, prepared for the family to view, because you don't want everybody seeing them working on and the results of that. And so it just kind of being there, not necessarily always trying to take over. You don't want to do that. You always want to get permission from the closest of kin and let them know what you're doing, but don't try to go behind their back making decisions and nothing like that. But you want to always just be there and find out. It requires good listening skills. And sometimes listening requires hearing when they're not saying nothing. And so it's not a science per se. It's something that you just have to do by faith and trust in God as you walk the family through this process.
okay. Any other comments about that?
I would just say that what helps you to navigate those types of situations basically is experience.
Yeah.
And I mean, as you go through the various experiences, as Pastor said, that they are unique. None are identical.
Right.
But what happens is that as you experience various situations and circumstances, different types of death, I mean, you have to understand when you're dealing with family members for a person who is 85 years old, even though the family still mourns their loss, it's often expected. They've lived a rather full life.
Right.
Versus with a parent whose child just left the house an hour ago, and they get a call that their only child is now dead. So you gain experience simply by dealing with a variance of circumstances. And again, I agree with Pastor Pleasant. You're led by the Holy Spirit. You have to learn how to pray and minister at the same time. And that's basically experience.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Experience in ministry, and again, as Pleasant highlighted, ministry of presence, your being there during that time speaks volumes. And I've discovered that families will reach out, especially during those moments when they are lost,
Mm-hmm.
that they will reach out. And as they reach out, you embrace that opportunity. And again, as Pleasant said, you don't try to take over,
Right.
but you try to give them the benefit
Support.
of support and experience that you've had going through these types of situations.
Right, right. Pastor Brooks, you want to chime in on that, please?
Yeah, just be a comfort. I mean, be helpful. You know, I was thinking about this, and I was just thinking about how when people call on pastors, they're really calling on the representatives of God, you know, and to certain people, you know, we're the closest, so to speak, to God. So, you know, just coming with that and just knowing that we're comforting them and we're there with them. You know, it's more than just our presence. It's really the presence of the Lord, and they feel that and they're appreciative of that. So.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions that you all have? Anyone? Okay. So another area that I wanted to talk about was COVID-19. That's our new invisible stressor, if you will. And it has changed the whole trajectory of this world. So how are you all handling that as ministers with the, you know, I'm sure some of you may have experienced some deaths of your members, some deaths of, or some illnesses of your members. How are you handling that as ministers?
Well, I definitely could say it is extremely challenging simply because we are never pastored in a pandemic. And so it has definitely challenged us in terms of requiring us to make some changes in terms of how we do ministry in the pandemic. A lot of hospitals won't even let you visit now because of COVID-19. And so some visitation has happened with Zoom, cell phones. I've talked with people on the phone, on cell phone, or FaceTime them and pray with them simply because the hospital have not allowed us to go and visit. And so that's a really challenging, because I've discovered most people, when they're hospitalized, they do want to see their pastor. And then when you have sometimes an older congregation who is not as technologically literate as some, that makes it even more difficult. And so it has produced a challenge. In times like that, I think you have to stay in constant contact with the family members. Let the family member know you're praying and checking up on them through them. But it has really challenged us in terms of how we do ministry, especially visitation of members who are hospitalized. You can't go to convalescent homes at all. So that is totally out. And so it makes it very challenging. We had a member in our congregation, Brother Jackson, who had a heart attack. And there was no way that I could talk with him at all until he got out of the hospital. But I stayed in contact with his daughter to let him know that the church is in support of him and whatever we can do to help. But that it makes it very challenging when you want to be there and you can't.
Right.
Yeah, as Pleasant said, there are a lot of restraints. As restraints loosen, there are more things that are permissible. But I know what I've done during the height of the restraints in terms of visitation is I have annexed the medical staff, the nursing station, and made contact to make sure that that member knows that I am very much trying to be connected with them. And a lot of times what will happen is dependent upon your relationship with that member, some members will give authorization for information to be released,
Right.
so that you know the inside as to what's going on with that individual.
Okay.
Let me say this, is that, you know, geographically, guidelines and rules vary. I'm actually in Florida, and while we have really been impacted by COVID-19, I have had the privilege of actually visiting members in hospice in their final days. As a matter of fact, as recent as yesterday, I had the privilege of visiting a member in the hospital. Our biggest thing here is that we are totally unable to minister to those who are COVID-19 patients. However, hospitals have somewhat separated the normal patients, and as a result of that, they are allowed certain individuals to come in, and in most instances, the pastors are granted that opportunity. One of the things that we've done as well is set up classes and actually have trained a lot of our church mothers and persons who are not technologically proficient to use Facebook and other virtual platforms. You would be surprised. I somewhat now regret that we taught them, because, boy, they blow up my inbox and message me all kinds of things.
Your messages are full now, huh?
Yeah, but what we've done is that we've educated, and I would say we probably have, I probably have some members chiming in now, no telling. But the bottom line is we try to equip them. Of course, we use virtual worship. We've gone to, we have a full array of weekly activities laid out using Zoom platform, Facebook Live, YouTube, our church website. And so we've tried to stay connected, but permit me to address something that I think is imperative as it relates to your question.
Yes.
One of the things that I've found really challenging, particularly in light of what I've experienced, as I stated, 15 deaths since the 2nd of April,
Yes.
is that I have a greater respect for funeral homes and what they've had to go through.
Yes.
Because families are not able to have the atypical traditional funerals and celebration of life services. We've not had a funeral in our church. We've been out of our edifice, off our campus. Basically, our administrative offices have been open, but our sanctuary has been closed since the last week of March.
Okay.
So many of our services have been graveside. The one I'm doing in the morning will be a graveside for a woman who has been a member of my church for 75 years.
Mm.
Are you listening? 75 years.
Yes.
She's 98 years old.
Mm.
Her son is the former mayor of Orlando. Her grandson now, who's a member of our church, is a commissioner, an important family. But we have to do a funeral graveside.
Right.
And that has been the case with many of my congregants. We've done graveside. They will only permit us to do roughly a 30 to 40-minute service, even in the chapel of the mortuary. So it is really restricted. A lot of families, I've had to counsel families who are upset. They are angry. They are infuriated because their loved one left their final plans all laid out.
Right.
You know, what they wanted to do, who they wanted to sing,
Mm-hmm.
who they wanted to read the scripture, and all of that because they had planned to have a traditional service.
Right. Wow, that's something. Yeah, it has changed everything for everybody in every aspect of life. And so it's really unfortunate that we're faced with this. I do know this, that it's allowing us to connect with others that we did not before with the Zoom and the electronic platforms that we have to address with now, that we have to address others with now. It has allowed us to come together in that aspect. And so that's a good thing about it. I want to look at the positive piece of it, because there is a positive to this, even though it's a lot of negative kind of tone that goes along with it. It is a positive to it. Pastors, I want to ask about you and your self-care, because when you are shepherding the flock, if you will, it is critical that you take care of yourself. And so I want to just kind of touch on that a little bit. Are you, just kind of focusing on yourself? Do you have time? Do you have the support that you need to just take time for yourself? That's critical at this point.
Go ahead, Pleasant.
No, I guess not, huh?
Yeah. Well, let me jump on in since
All
yes,
right, all right.
I am very meticulous about my health. I'm encouraging our congregation
Right.
as well, because we have to set the tenor and the tone.
Right.
We cannot just be leaders that are spiritual and quiet. We've got to be visible and vocal.
Right.
And so with that, I've encouraged my members, and I do it myself, make certain that I have my regular medical checkups. Even amid COVID-19, I have a relationship with my primary care physician. I go in for my checkups. I make certain I take my meds. One of the things that I've done is increase my multivitamin regimen. I've always taken a multivitamin, but every day now I take extra vitamin C, zinc, elderberry, and then I ensure that I take my good swig of apple cider vinegar. Okay. And so all of that cocktail keeps me going. I make certain that I am very meticulous, extra meticulous about hygiene now. As a matter of fact, depending upon where I go, who I interact with, when I come home, there have been times now that I actually take 3 showers in a day. Because I may go somewhere, I take my morning shower, I go somewhere, I interact, and then I say, I got to get these clothes off. I got to change my clothes. Right. So I'll come home, take another shower, and but you have to be very hygienic, and you have to make certain that you take your meds and exercise. That's something that I make it my business to do as often as I can. If I can do it daily, I do. But normally, minimally, I'll do it at least every other day or 4 days a week. Okay. I get my exercise in. For sleep and rest, I'm not doing any better with that. But but exercise, multivitamins, and hygiene and diet, I'm doing pretty good.
Good. I'm waiting on the other pastors to chime in on this one, because you gave a good one. So now let's hear the next one.
I wish I could say I have Pastor Morrison discipline.
I know, he's very disciplined.
The exercise and the diet and all that, I don't. I've been trying my best to practice self-care, because I do know how important it is. And I'm sure the other pastors can relate to this. It's like I'm more busier in this pandemic than I was before. Zoom and the technology has made you extremely accessible now.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's like I'm a lot more busy. And normally I do take the month of July off for vacation. But because of the pandemic, for whatever reason, I had pressured myself and said, no, the church needs to shepherd during this season. Right. But last week, I really just saw myself getting burnt out, and I was really shutting down. And so I took some time off away. This week, I just got back last night just to relax and to have some fun, to get my mind. And this is the first time I can say in almost 25 years of pastoring, this is my second church, that I really disconnected this time. I think I called my office maybe twice the whole time I was gone just to check on things. but I felt myself really getting burnt out, and that was a sign that I need to disconnect. And I feel so rejuvenated that I did that. And I think we have to, as pastors, take care of ourselves, because if we don't, we'll be no good for no one else. And so just a few days getting away was extremely helpful for me during this season.
Right. All right.
And on that note, I actually have some vacation scheduled. So surprise, Dr. Jackson.
All right, Pastor. Didn't know that.
But yeah, I'd agree. And the funny thing is, again, me being younger, the assumption is, oh well, you're young, you have lots of energy. Well, you can also be young and burnt out as well. So I'm trying to take that into consideration. I know I've had quite a few mentors. Dr. Bartlett is one of them, and just and stressing the importance of making sure you take care of yourself, because if just like I said, Pastor Pleasant, that if you're no good, I mean, how can you take care of anybody else?
Right.
As well, you set a bad precedent, as a leader. We can't tell everybody else that they need to take rest, and then we're not practicing what we preach.
Exactly. Very, very well said.
Yeah.
Pastor Bartlett, we waiting on you. We waiting on you, Elder. We waiting on you.
I'm with you at Pleasant, Elder. 47 years. I think what this has done, as Pleasant said, it pushes us in that we are all in a learning motif, learning to do ministry in a whole new fashion.
Oh, yeah.
But what it has caused me to do, I've been blessed with a good staff, and it has forced me into delegating more responsibility and alleviating some of the pressure.
Right.
I'm with Pleasant. I want to get away, but I'm not quite ready to get on a plane.
Oh, you are not.
Get in a car.
So
let me say this to you, and I totally agree with Pastor Pleasant. One of the things that has been an advantage for me is, and I don't want to refer back to this, but it's a part of it. When I was pastoring Jerusalem Church there in Los Angeles, during the sickness of my daughter,
Mhm.
I think I became, I developed a mentality for functioning under pressure. Truth of the matter is, again, for basically 16 years, my wife and I functioned in that predicament. At same time, while I pastored in South Central, I lived in Rialto, so I drove 64 miles one way every day to get to my office. Normally about 150 miles round trip a day, and we did that 6 days a week. So what happened when this came up, I was already conditioned. And one of the reasons is, it might sound crazy, Dr. Jackson, but one of the reasons that I'm no longer at the Jerusalem Church was because after our daughter passed, God just laid on my heart that my wife and I needed a change of scenery. We had ministered and struggled. It was nothing to do with the church. We just needed a change of scenery, psychologically, physically, emotionally,
Right.
whole 9 yards.
Right.
We were spent.
Yes.
And we needed a fresh start. And now 6 years into pastoring here, I end up.
You need another change of scenery?
With a pandemic. But yeah, I mean, after 36 years of pastoring, I'm conditioned, and I'm like Pastor Bartlett, though. I just refuse. I'm not getting on a plane and and that kind of thing. And so but we're doing good. We're doing well.
Yeah, that's a scary thought, getting on a plane at this point, to me.
Let me just say, the one thing that's been a blessing to me in this pandemic, though, I have really been able to see the strength of my church. And to see how our members have risen to the occasion has really been exciting to see their level of maturity, how they're ministering to one another, how they have stepped up at every level. Because honestly, I can say our church is not hurting at any level. The only thing that's wrong with our church is that we just cannot physically assemble. But we're still functioning, and that's a testament of the membership maturity. And pastors have done their job equipping them for the working of the ministry, because a lot is in their hands. I mean, we're feeding families every week. They're going out seeking resources to help us do that. We're giving out scholarships. And so that's really been a blessing that through this pandemic, in terms of ministering to me, is just I'm seeing the church, that it's a strong church. It has strength and it's able to function in spite of what's going on. And so that's really been exciting for me.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I don't think you finished, Pastor Bartlett. Did you finish with your statement about your?
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm with them. You're learning to delegate, and you know, my word of caution is for Pastor Brooks, because I can remember 25 years of these 47 years, I was bivocational. I pastored and worked and went to school. So, you know, I always caution him to make sure that he takes time out for him. And now that he's married, take time out for he and his wife.
That's right. That's right.
Can I say this? Staff, Dr. Jackson, Dr. Bartlett touched on it. Staff is imperative. I mean, even when you envision the shepherd in the Bible, the shepherd, what the tool and the instrument that's most valuable to the shepherd is the staff. Mm-hmm. And I've been blessed with an exceptional staff. And to piggyback on what Pastor Pleasant said, throughout this time financially, our church has been extremely blessed. As a matter of fact, for example, this year we actually gave out somewhere around $25,000 to $30,000 in scholarships to our graduating classes, students rather. So what is happening is that people, I think, are coming to understand how the church can function without walls.
Oh yeah.
And I think that people are coming to understand. And truth of the matter is, and I think Pastor Pleasant and Bartlett would agree, is that I think God has just used this and has implemented this divinely to break down some of the methodologies, some of the traditions, some of the ideologies.
Yes.
I mean, many of our churches have become more religious than they had spiritual. And they were more engaged in formality than in ministry.
That's right.
And so God has just, with the swipe of a virus, God has upset the apple cart and has shown us that it's a new day in the life of the church. And we as pastors now are called upon to be what pastors of the 21st century must be. And that's not just a good preacher or just a good teacher.
Right.
We have to be preacher, teacher. We have to take on those three hats of elder, bishop, and shepherd. Right. We have to assume those responsibilities administratively, managerially, and then, of course, spiritually.
That's right. Well said. Thank you so much. Thank you. Is there any other comments? Is there anyone that's listening in online? We're on live platforms on Facebook. If you are listening in and you have a comment or question, please type it and we will respond to you, or I will respond to you, or I'll make sure the ministers get your information to respond to you. I want to say this and then we can close out. Pastor Brooks, and you all know he was my pastor for many years from a child. My pastor now is his grandson. And I recall, and I was thinking about this while you all were talking, was that I had a procedure and he came to my house to see me. And he had to be 103 at that time. And it meant so much to me that he would make the effort to come and see me during that time. And so I know that it's critical when you do go and see those who are ailing, when you're able to, post or prior to COVID-19, to go into their home and see them and embrace them, because it will mean a world to them as to how they will heal, how they will respond to their whole environment. And so it's very critical. And so I just want to thank you all for joining us tonight on Caregiver Chronicles. This is one of our courses that we have in the modules for Caregiver Chronicles. It talks about observing the loved one's religious belief, because that is a critical piece of the healing process. And so that's why I asked you all to come and join us tonight. Is there any other closing comments that you want to make to those who are listening in? As I said, we're live on Facebook. We're live on Zoom. We're going to be on YouTube with this video as well. So is there anything that you want to tell those who are listening in?
I just want to give a shout out to the Christ Second Baptist Church. I'm looking at the participants. I have a lot of them online.
All right, Christ Second.
So I want to just give them a shout out. We sent out the information and they're online listening. So I praise God for them.
Amen.
It's great to be able to pastor a great church. And so I appreciate their support.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I wanted to thank you for allowing this format, this period discussion, thanking God for all of our people. And I want us to be encouraged to live in faith and not in fear, but to recognize that this pandemic is affecting us, Black and brown folk, in a very unique way. And so it pays for us not again to be fearful, to live in faith, to walk by faith, but to also exercise restraint and common sense so that we can come together once again and have koinonia. Thank you.
Let me thank you for the invitation to join in with this esteemed group of clerics here tonight. And I can't let Pastor Pleasant shout out his church and not shout out the best church on the East Coast. That's the Mount Pleasant Church of Orlando, Florida. But I do want to, in my parting comments, simply say I agree with Pastor Bartlett, is that I think this season is graduating us from from the level of common sense to wisdom. I think that for so long we've been acquiring knowledge, but we've not been correctly applying it, even in the life of the church. And so I think that moving forward, ministry will be different. I think that most pastors will be developing and operating a hybrid model of ministry that will be inclusive of both more traditional type of settings, but also inclusive of technology and the virtual platforms. I've said to our congregation, for an example, why would I bother now to convene on campus and expend my normal utility bill for a month on campus between $6,000 and $10,000 a month? Why would I go back to doing that, Pleasant, to simply teach 75 folk when my Bible study now I'm reaching I have 500 or 600 folk watching me. We have to look at, because we've got to understand as well, is that, for example, those 15 members I lost, they tied to the church. They gave to the church. That's missed and lost revenue that I'm now experiencing in the church. So we have to understand the new dynamics. And I want to thank you for the invitation. Thank you for being a part.
You're quite welcome. Thank you. Pastor Brooks?
I'll echo that as well. Thank you, Dr. Jackson, for this opportunity to be on this panel with these esteemed ministers. It's been good to meet you guys. even though virtually it's been good to meet you. And for Dr. Bartlett, it's been good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Fun fact, some of you may already know that this is, I'm a relatively young pastor, not just in age, but also in experience. I'm actually working on my second year pastoring. And so this actually marks the first official interview that I've had as in the capacity of a pastor. So thank you. You're setting some history in my life right now.
He makes me feel old. Of course I knew. Of course I knew his granddaddy well, and sitting here looking at Pastor Bartlett, T.P. Moss just shot up in my mind.
Wow.
He lives.
When I came to Los Angeles, T.P. Moss was there on Figueroa.
Yes,
and so I grew up, and then whenever I see Pleasant, I think about E.B. Hill.
Right.
So y'all, I got to be old now. I got to be old.
Oh, you're just seasoned. You're just seasoned. You're not old, just seasoned. All right, Pastor Bartlett.
Thank you again. Thank you so much.
Bless you. Bless you all. Bless you. So
thank you, brothers. Enjoyed this.
Bless you.
Yes, same here.
I want to just close out by saying that next week's topic on Friday Night Live, will be talking about a healthy lifestyle leads to longevity. So please join us next week. We will be back here at the same time. I look forward to seeing you. God bless you. May God keep you. And thank you again. Thank you all for joining us tonight.
God bless you.
And let us help you develop your Caregiver Chronicles. God bless. Bye-bye.